It's made up of these individual things called atoms. Different materials. Different particles. But everything was made up of these tiny, tiny particles that you couldn't see. Aristotle, completely different. He said everything was made out of water or earth or air or fire. Those were his 4 elements. So basically, if you were cold, you were made up of earth and water. If you were dry and you had no temperature, you were made out of fire and earth. If you were hot, you were made out of air and fire and if you were wet, you were made out of air and water. So this guy's theory stuck around for about 2,000 years. He was the most popular. Then we had these people called alchemists. And alchemists' goal really was to become rich. To either discover the elixir of life, something that would make you become immortal, or something that would make you become rich. And that was to turn materials into gold. So while they didn't actually come up with any real atomic theory, they were very useful because they designed experiments. They were the first people to experiment. They needed a rich patron, so either they married into money or they would have to be sponsored by somebody. Isaac Newton was actually an alchemist. Robert Boyle was an alchemist. So the alchemists were very important, and probably, I would imagine they burned their houses down a lot, and they were pretty smelly. And I'm going to show you a video clip, a neat video clip for one of them. John Dalton, billiard ball, solid ball. So as long as you draw some sort of shape that looks like a ball. He said, yep, Democritus was right. All material is basically made out of this solid material that we can't see. J.J. Thomson discovered there are these things that were negatively charged. We call it the Raisin Bun Theory. And basically, the dough was positively charged, and the raisins were negatively charged. But you would have an equal number of positives and negatives. So a chocolate chip cookie, the chocolate chips were negative, the cookie was positive. That was his theory. Ernest Rutherford came up with the idea that you had this positive core and it was really small. He did a famous gold foil experiment. So he had gold foil in a circle on a screen all the way around 360 degrees, and he shot alpha particles at it. Some of them went through the gold foil onto the screen, but some of them were deflected off at angles, and some came straight back to the machine. And he likened it to firing a cannonball at a tissue paper and the tissue paper bouncing that cannonball back. So they were very surprised. And because of the deflection, they knew that that core must be positive because the alpha particles were positive. So he said, you've got these electrons, and basically they're buzzing around this nucleus on these paths, kind of like bees around a beehive. But he basically didn't have any idea about what the paths were. Niels Bohr, who we've talked about, said, okay, you've got this positive core, but these electrons should then be collapsing to the center. They should be going, because there's this positive pull from the middle, they must be going to the center. So there's a reason why they're not collapsing. And he said they must be traveling in orbits on these energy levels. And each one of these energy levels has a fixed amount of energy associated with it. But you can't be between these energy levels. You can't be between the rings. You're going to have a fixed amount of energy, and you're definitely going to be found in these orbits. So we've gone a little bit further since then, but this is all you need to know for grade 11 chemistry for theory of the atom. We now know that we don't actually travel electrons in circles around the nucleus. But this is